Those against? Abstentions? The result of the voting is as follows: 11 votes in favor, 2 votes against, 2 abstentions. The provisional agenda has been adopted. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as representative of the United States. Colleagues, today was meant to be a straightforward mandated meeting of the 1737 Committee. But unfortunately, our Russian and Chinese colleagues continue to block this committee's important work as part of their collaboration with the Iranian regime. On March 6th, the Russian and Chinese delegations officially blocked and objected to the 90-day report of the 1737 Committee mandated in Resolution 1737. By doing this, Russia and China have made clear that the 1737 Committee exists and is functional. It is a simple fact that on September 19th of last year, the Council decisively voted against a resolution introduced pursuant to Resolution 2231 to continue sanctions relief for Iran, thereby reinstating 6 previously suspended UN Security Council resolutions relating to Iran to include the resolution that established the committee. So what this means in plain language is that all member states of the United Nations should be implementing an arms embargo against Iran, banning the transfer and trade of missile technology, and freezing relevant financial assets in line with the robust UN sanctions that had been in place before 2015 and have now been snapped back into place. The UN provisions to be reimposed are not arbitrary, but instead narrowly scoped to address the threat posed by Iran's nuclear, missile, and conventional arms programs and Iran's ongoing support for terrorism. Iran had ample opportunity to prevent this outcome. France, the United Kingdom, and Germany offered to extend the so-called snapback mechanism if Iran were to account for its highly enriched uranium stockpile, if Iran would comply with IAEA obligations that were already mandatory under the NPT, and if Iran would resume direct diplomacy with the United States. All of those options were put on the table in good faith for Iran, and all of them were rejected. In that vein, Iran has remained defiant. Just last week, the IAEA Director General's report reiterated that Iran is the only state in the world without nuclear weapons to have produced and accumulated uranium enriched up to 60%. It also confirmed, this is the IAEA Director General's report, that for over 8 months now, Iran has refused to provide the IAEA with updated information on or access to this highly enriched uranium stockpile or other previously declared low enriched uranium stocks at facilities affected by military strikes in June 2025. The Director General himself describes this as, quote, a matter of non-proliferation concern and of compliance with the NPT Safeguards Agreement, end quote. Pursuant to the September 19th vote and this Council's binding resolutions, we meet today with a committee that is operational. The committee has received exemption requests. The requests have been approved by this operational committee. The Secretariat has called for applications to serve on the panel of experts. That selection process is now underway. We urge council members to press our Russian and Chinese colleagues to allow the council to appoint a committee chair. This obstructionism thus far on the matter of a 1737 committee chair is predicated on a bad faith and baseless reinterpretation of events. The truth of the matter is that Russia and China do not want a functional committee, not out of some type of legal objection, but because they want to protect their partner Iran and can continue to maintain defense cooperation that is now once again prohibited. Both countries have sustained military trade ties. In 2022, Russia began by buying Iranian drones in violation of Resolution 2231, which imposed time-bound restrictions on Iran's nuclear and conventional arms activity. Russia has also acquired close-range ballistic missiles from Iran and provided Iran with attack helicopters earlier this year in violation of Resolution 1929, which imposed even more sanctions against the regime's nuclear program. All of this while Iran continues to evade sanctions, fire ballistic missiles and drones at civilians in the region, and attack civilian shipping in the Gulf, and wreak havoc in the Strait of Hormuz. So, colleagues, let's end. Enough of the performative hand-wringing supposedly over process. The reality is Russia and China do not want this committee because it will continue to protect their partner, Iran. In light of that, the United States will continue to work to ensure Iran can no longer hold the world hostage with its missile, drone, and certainly not a nuclear program. Let me close by reminding the Council the United States pursued a diplomatic solution in good faith prior to the initiation of snapback and after. I outlined for you the activities of the United Kingdom, of France, and of Germany along those same lines. Each time we articulated clear timeframes for meaningful dialogue that could address the outstanding issues of concern to the international community, including the behaviors prohibited under the reinstated Security Council resolutions. Time and again, Iran chose not to take those opportunities. I thank you. I will resume my function as president of the council. I now give the floor to those council members who wish to make statements. I give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President. This year, we will mark 20 years since the Council adopted Resolution 1737. 20 years during which Iran's nuclear and missile programs have been amongst the most pressing threats to international peace and security. The UK has been clear all that time that we favoured negotiation and diplomacy. But we have repeatedly seen Iran not act in good faith to address international concerns. So I want to start by expressing solidarity with our partners in the Gulf and the wider region who took no part in the military action launched on 28 February, but who have been the target of waves of repeated and unprovoked Iranian missile and drone attacks over the last week. We strongly condemn these attacks. They are endangering civilians, destabilizing the region, and threatening the global economy. They must stop. We pay tribute to the swift actions taken by those partners to protect civilians, including UK nationals. Their efforts have saved lives, and we have acted to defend the Gulf and will continue to stand by the region in the face of this threat. This is exactly why the UK co-sponsored alongside 135 countries and voted for Resolution 2817 yesterday. Today's crisis underlines the gravity of Iran's approach to the nuclear and missile files. Our position is clear. We will not overlook actions that undermine international security or the global non-proliferation regime. Iran's reckless and repeated use of ballistic missiles, including against its neighbors without provocation, has intensified regional insecurity and heightened the risk to civilians. Our concerns about its nuclear program remain serious and long-standing. Iran has persistently failed to fulfill its safeguard obligations and fully cooperate with the IAEA. There is no credible civilian justification for over 400 kilograms of high-enriched uranium. This is unacceptable and erodes confidence in the peaceful nature of its activities. It was this sustained nuclear escalation that led the E3 to trigger the snapback mechanism last year. We underline the importance of all UN member states, including Iran, implementing the reinstated sanctions fully and without exception. Resolution 1737 imposes sanctions banning nuclear technology and materials, imposes asset freezes on key individuals and entities linked to Iran's enrichment program, and establishes a sanctions committee. These restrictions play a critical role in curbing Iran's destabilizing actions by narrowing its access to the capabilities that sustain its missile program, and by constraining Iran's nuclear proliferation activities. Effective global compliance is essential for the 1737 committee to carry out its mandate. We encourage rigorous monitoring and reporting and call for the swift appointment of a chair. The panel of experts must be established without delay to independently investigate alleged violations of sanctions. We call on those member states that have sought to evade or undermine the UN sanctions reinstated under the snapback mechanism to cease doing so immediately. This approach only emboldens Iran. No member state should, directly or indirectly, undertake or facilitate any action that breaches or circumvents sanctions, and all should press Iran to halt its destabilizing behavior. All member states have a clear responsibility to fulfill their UN obligations in full, particularly on an issue as grave and consequential as this. President, the United Kingdom remains unwavering in its commitment to finding a lasting and sustainable solution that ensures Iran never acquires a nuclear weapon. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Mr. President, we are disappointed by the fact that the majority of council members didn't manage to muster up the courage and wisdom to speak out against this flagrant violation of decisions previously taken by the council. Responsibility for the lawlessness that's being unleashed at the council falls fully and squarely on the shoulders of the US presidency, as well as on the shoulders of delegations supporting it or condoning its single-handed decisions, the decisions of the US. We regret the fact that some colleagues are continuing to follow Washington's lead, which already back in 2018 thwarted the regular implementation of the JCPOA by illegally and unilaterally withdrawing from the nuclear deal and continuing to do everything possible to nullify any prospects of reaching a diplomatic agreement on Iran's nuclear program. The position of the Russian Federation, in light of assertions about supposed activation of the mechanism for reinstating Security Council resolutions on Iran, anti-Iran, is unchanged, principled, and consistent. As I noted already today, the UK, France, and Germany could not have activated this instrument. Now, I won't delve into the details. Our position is spelled out in detail in many letters addressed to the Security Council and the General Assembly. All colleagues can read those. I will simply remind you of the main points. First, these countries, strip themselves of the right to invoke the snapback by their chronic violations of the JCPOA and Resolution 2231. I am referring to the inability of the European Troika to fulfill their obligations to ensure economic benefits for Iran stemming from the lifting of EU sanctions, which were in force up until 2015. I'm also referring to their illegal decision to resume unilateral sanctions pressure after Transition Day, the JCPOA Transition Day, that is 18th of October 2023. International law is fairly clear-cut on this issue. A party that does not comply its obligations under any agreement or treaty cannot invoke the instruments contained therein in their own interests. This is what the so-called clean hands doctrine speaks to, as does the Pacta sunt servanda principles, not to mention advisory opinions issued by the International Court of Justice. Second, the JCPOA, which is an inextricable part of Resolution 2231, of which the JCPOA is a part, clearly sets out the procedure for resolving any contradictions when implementing said agreement. Before the issue of non-compliance with the JCPOA can be referred to the Security Council for consideration. Now, this issue must be considered in detail by the Dispute Resolution Mechanism in Vienna, that is the DRM. Paragraphs 36 and 37 of the JCPOA set forth a specific algorithm, a formula for conducting this process. So no matter how much the UK, France, and Germany tried to convince us that they supposedly used the dispute resolution mechanism all the way back in 2020, the fact of the matter remains. This mechanism was not just not exhausted, it wasn't even launched due to serious procedural gaps which were never resolved. Thus, the so-called notification the Europeans sent regarding the triggering of the snapback on the 28th of August 2025, sent to the Security Council, was legally null and void. For that reason, the outcome of the 19th of September vote on the draft resolution aimed at maintaining the regime, lifting anti-Iranian Security Council resolutions, couldn't have had any legal nor procedural ramifications. In a nutshell, there was no snapback. UN Security Council Resolution 2231 lost its force on the 18th of October 2025. Against this backdrop, Western attempts to justify their groundless assertions using the UN Secretariat position do not stand up to criticism either. UN colleagues did take steps, specifically informing member states about the resumption of resolutions and recreating the website of Security Council Committee 1737 and its sanctions list. Well, these steps are simply illegal actions taken by the Secretariat in violation of Security Council Resolution 2231, as well as Article 100 of the UN Charter, which prohibits the Security Council and organization staff from receiving instructions from any government. Under such conditions, the Russian Federation sees no rationale for getting Security Council Committee 1737 back up and running, not to mention discussing its functioning at Security Council meetings. We deeply regret that Western delegations are insisting on trying to legalize their claims. This is having a negative impact on the work of the entire Security Council. The Europeans and their allies are simply holding hostage the issue of seat distribution in Security Council subsidiary bodies, demanding that it be linked with the appointment of the chair of the illegitimate 1737 committee. We'd like to underscore yet again, any such attempts are doomed to fail. We urge our Western colleagues to stop such groundless and unconstructive political paradigms, stop pursuing them, because they are dealing a serious blow to the effectiveness of our joint work. We cannot but remind you that the Russian Federation, together with China, has done everything within its power to prevent such a difficult, very difficult legal and procedural situation from coming to pass. At the height of disagreements over the snapback, we put forward a depoliticized and balanced draft resolution on a technical rollover of Resolution 2231 for a period of 6 months. If that document had been adopted, it would have helped us to freeze the situation for a little longer, giving the settlement of disagreements on the Iranian nuclear program without creating such a crisis at the Security Council, giving this opportunity a chance. Well, Western states and other delegations supporting them did not seize that opportunity. Subsequent events, especially those that we've had to bear witness to over the last week and a half, clearly demonstrate that diplomatic settlement was not part of the plan for the US and their allies from the very beginning. They knowingly raised the stakes. They whipped up hysteria surrounding supposed plans Iran had to get a nuclear weapon. They were never corroborated by IAEA reports, in contrast to what the US representative asserted today. This was done in order to undertake yet another military venture against Tehran and to ensure greater escalation of the situation in the Middle East and beyond. Against this backdrop, we'd like to remind you that the Russian Federation categorically condemns the act of military aggression against Iran by the US and Israel in violation of the UN Charter and the basic norms of international law. Such actions cannot be justified in any way, shape, or form. And the groundless and divorced from reality insinuations surrounding the Iranian program aimed at peaceful development of the atom cannot serve as rationale either. Linked to today's meeting, we cannot but underscore that while previously US colleagues had no legal grounds for raising the issue of resuming the anti-Iranian resolutions of the Security Council and the restoration of the 1737 committee, previously it had no legal rationale, now it doesn't even have any moral rationale. Our country will continue to do everything within its power to counter such attempts. Will also facilitate all initiatives aimed at reverting the situation surrounding Iran to the realm of political and diplomatic settlement. For that reason, on the 7th of March, my delegation disseminated among council members a draft resolution calling an immediate cessation of military hostilities by all parties. Our document was balanced, it was unbiased, and depoliticized. As we said yesterday during the vote, the Russian text was focused on condemning any strikes on civilians and civilian infrastructure, as well as the need to ensure security for all states in the Middle East and beyond. The text also urged all parties involved to immediately go back to the negotiating table. We believe that it is such initiatives, rather than attempts to use the Security Council to promote politicized and illegal paradigms, it is such initiatives that will allow the Security Council to fulfill its direct responsibility to maintain international peace and security. We regret that a number of council members didn't find the strength to support the Russian draft. I thank you.
I thank the representative for his statement. I give the floor to the representative of China.
Thank you, President. China has just stated its position regarding the 1737 committee and its opposition to the convening of this meeting. China doesn't intend to comment on the committee's work. However, as a council member, China wishes to emphasize the following on the current situation of the Iranian nuclear issue and its path forward. First, the use of force is not the right way to resolve international disputes. Iran's sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity must be respected. The United States and Israel must immediately stop their military operations, refrain from attacking Iranian nuclear facilities under IAEA safeguards, avoid further escalation of the tension, and prevent the conflict from spreading across the entire Middle East region. All parties should maintain calm and restraint, fulfill their obligations under international law, and effectively safeguard the safety of civilians and civilian infrastructure. The international community should send a clear and unequivocal message opposing the regression of the world to the law of the jungle. Second, the Iranian nuclear issue must ultimately return to the track of a political and diplomatic settlement. I want to emphasize that it was precisely the United States that unilaterally withdrew from JCPOA, which triggered the Iranian nuclear crisis. It was also the United States that in total disregard of its own credibility, on 2 occasions joined Israel and resorted to blatant use of force against Iran during the negotiation process, which rendered the diplomatic efforts futile. The United States, as the instigator of the Iranian nuclear crisis, its conduct violates the international law and the purposes and principles of the UN Charter. China strongly opposes to such conduct. China strongly condemns such conduct. We urge the US to change its course of action immediately and return to the course of diplomatic negotiations and clearly undertake not to use of force and engage with Iran on negotiations and reach a solution that meets the expectations of the international community. The relevant European countries should cease to fan the flames. They should play a constructive role in easing tensions. China commends the regional countries and the IAEA for their mediation efforts and support their continued assistance in resuming negotiations to promote a peaceful solution to the Iranian nuclear issue. Third, fairness and justice must be upheld, and Iran's right as a state party to the NPT to peaceful uses of nuclear energy must be safeguarded. Iran has repeatedly affirmed that it doesn't seek to develop nuclear weapons. Even after its nuclear facilities were attacked, it continued to cooperate with the IAEA and engaged in a constructive manner in multiple rounds of professional and pragmatic talks with the United States. Iran's sincerity should be taken seriously. IAEA reports and its Director General have both stated that there is no evidence indicating that Iran plans to manufacture nuclear weapons. The experience with the JCPOA demonstrates that comprehensive and stringent safeguards applied to Iran can fully ensure the peaceful nature of its nuclear program. Fourth, the starting point for Council actions should be to ease tensions and to safeguard lasting peace and stability in the Middle East. Such actions shouldn't be biased, nor should they become tools for sanctions and pressure to serve the political agendas of individual countries. The Council should help the parties build trust, bridge differences, and create favorable conditions for resuming negotiations, ensuring that dialogue proceeds smoothly and effectively in an environment free from the threat of force. A certain country should stop manipulating the Council for political purposes. Despite divisions among Council members, pushing for the reimposition of sanctions will only deepen confrontation and undermine prospects for a political settlement. President, the proper settlement of the Iranian nuclear issue bears on the authority and effectiveness of the global non-proliferation regime and is crucial to peace and stability in the Middle East. As a permanent member of the Council and a JCPOA participant, China will continue to uphold an objective and impartial position, enhance communication and coordination with all parties, build consensus, uphold justice, and play a constructive role in restoring peace to the Middle East and advancing the political solution to the Iranian nuclear issue. I thank you, President.
I thank the representative of China for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Panama.
Gracias.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the current context of tensions in the Middle East, the situation regarding Iran's nuclear program remains a matter that we must increasingly pay urgent attention to as an international community. The Republic of Panama remains of the firm belief that non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction stands as a priority for international security.